In this presentation, we will review the environmental assessment for the Big Burrito Mountain Bike Trail. This project is being proposed by the Moab Field Office of the Bureau of Land Management and Trail Mix, the Grand County Non-Motorized Trail Committee. The proposed Big Burrito Trail would intersect the Sandflats Special Recreation Management Area. The Sandflats area receives around 125,000 visits per year and offers a unique recreation experience for hikers, cyclists, ATVs, and Jeeps. Sandflats Management Area is allocated solely to recreation. The area is not available for grazing or mineral resource development. It is a popular destination because of its aesthetic qualities and its close proximity to the town of Moab. Trail Mix, the local non-motorized trail committee, proposes to mark and construct a non-motorized single-track trail in the Sandflats area. This action is in response to increased mountain bike recreation in the Sandflats area. Mountain biking is increasing in popularity nationwide, and the Moab area is no exception. There's a demand for additional non-motorized mountain bike trails, to which the Moab Office Recreational Management Plan has responded by setting a goal to create up to 150 miles of new trails. The Big Burrito Trail would offer intermediate cyclists a mountain bike trail close to Moab, as well as provide a less technical ending to the famous Whole Enchilada route. The Whole Enchilada is an epic ride that attracts cyclists from around the world. Currently, the 27-mile trail is divided into two possible endings. Cyclists can choose to ride the dusty, highly trafficked Sandflats Road or the technical Porcupine Rim Trail. Though technical, difficult riding at the end of a long ride, cyclists generally elect to do the Porcupine Rim Trail as it offers a more immersive experience. Building an intermediate trail would create safer conditions by providing a trail suitable for less experienced cyclists and removing cyclists from a busy roadway. Three alternatives were considered to meet the purpose and need for this project. For each alternative, the project proponent commits to marking and constructing the trail, including adding signage sufficient for making the trail understandable and safe. Special care will be taken with signing when the mountain bike trail intersects with motorized routes. Alternative A is the proponent's proposed action. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but the proposed route is shown in red in the upper portion of the map. This route would construct 9.3 miles of new trail, with 1.7 miles of that occurring in the Grand Staff Wilderness Characteristics area. Alternative B represents the proposed route without the 1.7 mile portion in the Wilderness Characteristics area. The Wilderness Characteristics area would be avoided by connecting the Big Burrito Trail to an adjoining Jeep route. This alternative would designate 7.6 miles of non-motorized mountain bike trail. Alternative C, was the no action alternative. This alternative was included to provide baseline information for decision making. In this scenario, no new trails would be constructed and the purpose and need for this project would not be met. In the initial scoping period, an interdisciplinary team identified resources that may be impacted by the proposed action and alternatives. A list of all the resources considered for analysis is located in Appendix A of the EA. In deciding the context and intensity of the impacts, it is assumed that construction of the Big Burrito Mountain Bike Trail would lead to an increase in mountain bike use in the Sandflats area. Through scoping, it was determined that the project may impact wildlife, recreation, soils, threatened and endangered species, vegetation, and wilderness characteristics. Let's start with wildlife. Wildlife resources in the area that might be impacted by the project include nesting habitat for migratory birds and raptors and critical winter habitat for mule deer. It is expected that Alternative A and Alternative B will have comparable impacts on wildlife populations and habitat. Migratory bird and raptor nesting season extends from March 1st to August 31st. To avoid impacts on these species, no new trail construction or organized events, such as mountain bike races, would be allowed during this time. This would eliminate impacts to nesting migratory species and raptors. To protect mule deer winter range, no trail construction or organized events would be authorized between November 15th and April 15th. Within the crucial winter range area, impacts from public use would create short-term and transient disturbances that could temporarily displace wildlife from the vicinity of the trail. Public use during the winter season is expected to be minimal, and individual or small groups of bikers passing through would be sporadic. Daily or seasonal migration of mule deer are not expected to be interrupted by the proposed trail. Recreation. A considerable portion of the recreation economy of Grand County is dependent on cycling-related tourism. Building an intermediate trail would provide recreation opportunities close to town for a wide variety of cyclists, as well as provide a safer end route for cyclists riding the Whole Enchilada Trail. Alternative A would provide a longer section of single-track trail and a more immersive, safer experience for riders. This trail avoids connecting with the busy Sandflats Road by detouring through the Grandstaff Wilderness Characteristics area. Safety-related incidences are expected to decrease under this alternative. Alternative B would meet the purpose and need of creating additional mountain bike recreation opportunities, but would result in a shorter section of single track trail. Cyclists would still be interfacing with Sandflats Road for about 1.7 miles, though safety-related incidences are still expected to decrease under this alternative. Soils. The proposed route for each alternative is expected to be on roughly 50% rock and 50% rock outcrop and 50% soil. Soils in the project area are deep, loamy fine sands or fine sandy loams. The soil types in this area are resistant to disturbance when wet, meaning that this trail would be rideable year-round in all conditions. Approximately 50% of each proposed trail alignment is on soil units with well-developed biological soil crusts that are in nearly pristine condition. Alternative A would create 9.3 miles of new single track at roughly 4 feet wide, resulting in a disturbance footprint of roughly 4.5 acres of soil. A total of 1.89 acres of biological soil crust are expected to be permanently destroyed or impacted by wind erosion. In contrast, alternative B would create 7.4 miles of new single track at roughly 4 feet wide, resulting in the disturbance of roughly 3.6 acres of soil. A total of 1.5 acres of biological soil crust are expected to be permanently destroyed or impacted by wind erosion under this alternative. Threatened and endangered species. Suitable habitat for the Mexican spotted owl and southwestern willow flycatcher exist in Grandstaff Canyon. This canyon is adjacent to the proposed project area. The Mexican spotted owl selects for canyons with rocky cliffs, while the southwestern willow flycatcher utilizes riparian habitats along streams and wetlands. Starting in 2005, occupancy surveys have been completed annually for each species. No Mexican spotted owls have been detected in the area. Southwestern willow flycatchers have been detected in early season migration use, but no nest sites have been located. The proposed trail and alternatives are not located within suitable habitat for either bird species, so there will be no direct impacts to those species. However, the proposed route is located within the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's recommended half-mile nest buffer. Construction and use of the trail would cease for the duration of the nesting period if either species were detected within a half mile of the trail. Indirect impacts from noise and human presence would not impact nesting birds. The easternmost extent of the trail is within an area where the threatened Jones cycladenia plant species could occur. In April of 2015, a BLM staff member surveyed the portion of the proposed trail and did not find any extant plants. The staff member concluded that the proposed trail would not inhibit the growth of Jones cycladenia. Vegetation. The proposed trail and alternatives cross through several vegetation types. The eastern extent is heavily forested with pinyon and juniper, and the western extent transitions to a blackbrush high desert scrub community. For alternatives A and B, pinyon and juniper trees would be pruned to allow for bicycle travel. It is unlikely that any trees would be totally removed. Shrubs, forbs, and grasses will be permanently removed as needed within the 2-foot wide path. Areas with wilderness characteristics and wilderness study areas. Alternative A would create 1.7 miles of mountain bike trail across lands determined by the BLM to possess wilderness characteristics. The Wilderness Characteristics Unit is attached to the larger Grandstaff Wilderness Study Area. The construction of the proposed trail would eliminate 136 areas from the inventory of lands with wilderness characteristics. The Moab Field Office contains 616,000 acres of lands inventoried as possessing wilderness characteristics, so eliminating 136 acres only represents a loss of 0.02%. Alternative B would avoid creating trail and lands with wilderness characteristics entirely. And with that, we'll transition to discussing the inadequacies of the EA.
Okay, the first inadequacy that we discussed was that the methodology should be better explained within the document. While there is a systematic approach that the environmental assessment utilizes, I'm sorry, one sec here. This is being difficult. Okay, I'll start that over. While there's a systematic approach that the environmental assessment utilizes, the actual process of carrying out research is not recorded. This is important because it provides transparency for stakeholders that view this document. Within methodology, I also believe that factors that were considered in decision-making process should be stated and addressed within the document. Inclusion of methodology section should help simplify the overall process, as stakeholders will not need to ask questions pertaining to methodology as is already cited in the EA. A timeline for the proposed action is excluded from the document. Establishing a timeline for this project is crucial for stakeholders to coordinate efforts, as well as giving the general public an idea of when construction will be taking place and when it is expected to be complete. Without a working timeline included in this document, I believe it'll be a lot harder for the public to buy in, as well as stakeholders, and give the project the support it needs to really be implemented. A timeline allows for construction deadlines that will help stakeholders gauge the progress of the proposed action and allow status updates for other stakeholders as well as the public. The next inadequacy is the process of monitoring seems to be excluded from this document. The monitoring process is crucial to any proposed action in regards to gauging impacts. If the applicants of this proposed action don't believe that the monitoring process is necessary, they should be able to justify and provide convincing reasons why within the document. Some questions that we came up with: how will impacts to threatened and endangered species be known if there's no monitoring process? How will direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts be known without a monitoring process? Shouldn't monitoring be part of the construction process? And if so, who should we designate authority of oversight and actions? There is no table of contents within this document. Addition of the table of contents would make this environmental assessment much easier to navigate, as well as make the document more complete. Environmental assessments should always come with the table of contents. This document should have been proofread for grammatical errors. There are numerous spelling and grammatical errors within this document, including scientific names. Errors such as these make this document look unprofessional and unappealing to those who may view it. Proofreading is not a difficult task, and the applicant should have assigned someone to review the document and edit it before it was published and distributed to stakeholders. And with that, we will transition to Rachel, and she will continue on inadequacies and their importance.
All right, so another inadequacy is that they've declined to include statistics for the Porcupine Rim Trail. The document's public comment section states that the Porcupine Rim Trail sees many injuries each year. Some of these injuries are so serious they require a search and rescue team. Navigating a team through these trails could potentially have a negative impact on the environment. The assessment does not discuss the statistics of these accidents, which would be helpful to assess whether a new trail is needed. The washed out Jeep Trail, which Porcupine Rim calls home, could also be improved and maintained. Now I can't switch screens. Our resolution to improve the Big Burrito environmental assessment are as follows. Number 1, creating a timeline including when trail marking, building, and maintenance will occur. The document did not contain this information, but a news article stated the trail would be created in 3 phases that impact wildlife as little as possible, meaning work could take place 2 months out of each year. Building has to be in accordance with habitat restrictions such as mule deer and nesting birds. Number 2, collecting data on species in the area and how the trail will impact their habitat. The article did not account for wildlife impacts. Instead, they deferred the impacts to a nearby Jeep trail. They are implying that Jeep traffic will cause more disturbance than the mountain bike traffic. Number 3, describe how the Bureau of Land Management will monitor the trail's ongoing impact on sensitive resources. This should include a periodic monitoring and possible mitigation of the impacts that the use of this trail may cause. Wildlife, soils, soil crust, and the wilderness characteristics area are all pieces of the environment that should be considered. Although the creation of the trail may potentially have the biggest impact on the environment, it surely won't be the only impact. And number 4, inputting statistics regarding search and rescue missions at this park, specifically Porcupine Rim Trail. The Big Burrito Trail is supposedly going to be a safer option to this existing trail, which causes many injuries to its riders. The number of injuries caused and impacts of the search and rescue missions will further the argument as to why the new trail is needed. Some of the cooperating agencies that would help with this project are the Bureau of Land Management, United States Fish and Wildlife Services, and Utah's Department of Natural Resources. Now we'll go into the importance of the inadequacies. The information omitted in the Big Burrito Mountain Bike Trail environmental assessment is important because it creates a more thorough and legally adequate document will limit legal challenges. Our resolutions are the best options because they provide in-depth factual information that will create a better argument as to why the Big Burrito Trail expansion is needed. And then now for the conclusion, the proposed action would result in no significant impact. An environmental impact statement is not required. A finding of no significant impact statement will be created based on the findings of the environmental assessment.